The spaceship lurched forward, its engines gasping for life. Captain Elena Mercer clung to the command console as sparks showered down, illuminating the small, dimly lit cockpit in harsh bursts of light. Outside, the darkness of the alien sector sprawled ahead, unwelcoming and silent. Yet, for all its quiet, it brimmed with hidden hostility. "Elena, if this ship takes another hit, we'll be drifting for the rest of eternity," muttered her chief engineer, Jonas, his face pale but resolute. He was right, of course. They were in the heart of hostile space, where Earth's tiny interstellar presence was tolerated at best, ignored at worst. "We'll make it, Jonas," Elena replied, though she didn't quite believe it herself. "Set a course for the Galactic Council's main outpost. It's our only chance." As she issued the command, the worn and battered console whirred weakly in response. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the controls, not from fear but from the weight of the responsibility. Her crew of 5 was all she had left, and Earth's survival rested on the thin thread of hope she clung to. The ship trembled as it cut through the darkness. Elena took a steadying breath, forcing herself to appear confident. The Galactic Council, a gathering of the most powerful species in the universe, had made it clear they viewed humans as a minor annoyance. Earth was a young, fragile world in their eyes, and humanity's struggles were beneath their notice. But this time, she was determined they would listen. "Captain, incoming transmission," said Lee, the ship's communications officer, breaking the tense silence. Lee was younger than the rest, but her focus and determination made her an asset. She patched the call through to the main screen, and a towering alien figure filled the display. "Captain Mercer, state your business." The alien's voice rumbled, deep and resonant, almost like a predator's growl. Its eyes gleamed with a disdain that made Elena's spine stiffen. "Counselor Rhett," Elena began, keeping her tone firm. "I'm here under emergency protocol. Earth is under an unprecedented threat, a spatial anomaly that's expanding rapidly. It's only a matter of time before it reaches neighboring systems. If we don't act..." Rhett interrupted with a dismissive wave. "Your kind's penchant for drama is well known, human. The Council is not a refuge for every struggling civilization in the galaxy." A flicker of anger crossed Elena's face, but she kept her composure. "This isn't about shelter, Counselor. This anomaly is different. It's accelerating. Earth scientists predict it could destabilize the entire sector if it continues unchecked." Rhett's gaze was unyielding, his alien features sharp and unreadable. "The Council has many matters of importance. Why should we waste our resources on a species that only just discovered space travel?" Elena felt a pang in her chest, but she met his gaze head-on. "Because we share this galaxy, whether you see us as equals or not. The anomaly doesn't care about status or superiority. It's a force that none of us fully understand, and if it reaches your systems, there will be no bargaining with it." The silence that followed her words was heavy. Rhett's eyes narrowed, his gaze probing as if assessing her worth. "So you bring us a problem you cannot solve, hoping we will handle it for you. Typical human presumption." "Typical?" Jonas muttered under his breath, fists clenched at his sides. "We didn't come here to beg," he added in a low growl, and Elena gave him a warning glance. But the sentiment was shared, each of them was exhausted, yet their resolve remained unbroken. Elena took a steadying breath, locking eyes with Rhett. "We're not asking for charity, Counselor. We have data, technology, primitive by your standards perhaps, but information that could help us all. All we ask is cooperation." Rhett's lips curled in a faint, disdainful smile. "Perhaps it is your earthly ingenuity that I find so hard to take seriously." He paused, leaning closer to the screen. "Very well. You have one opportunity to convince the Council. We are granting you temporary clearance to dock. But make no mistake, human, your presence here is tolerated, not welcomed." With a final, withering glare, the transmission cut off, leaving the screen dark and empty. Elena let out a shaky breath, glancing around at her crew. "That's the best we could have hoped for." Jonas scowled. "Barely. Did you hear the way he spoke to you? They think we're little more than insects." "Let them think what they want," Elena replied, her voice steady. "We're here to protect Earth, not to change their minds. We'll show them what we can do with or without their respect." The ship's engines roared to life again as they received clearance codes, and the crew braced themselves for what lay ahead. Each of them knew this mission would likely define Earth's place in the galaxy for generations to come. As they approached the docking bay of the Council's towering station, a sense of unease settled over them. The air inside the ship was thick with unspoken fears and hopes, but the spark of determination remained. This was their one chance to prove humanity's worth, and they were ready to risk everything. The docking bay was eerily silent as the crew disembarked, their footsteps echoing against the cold, polished floors of the Galactic Council station. Towering archways loomed overhead, etched with intricate symbols that glowed faintly, casting an otherworldly glow. Elena couldn't help but feel like they were stepping into the heart of a leviathan, where each shadow hid a watchful eye. "Everyone stay alert," Elena said, her voice low but firm. She could feel the weight of her crew's gaze on her, their confidence mingling with apprehension. "We're here to make our case, but don't forget, they don't want us here." Jonas grunted in agreement, his sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. "Seems they're more interested in intimidation than hospitality," he muttered. "You'd think they'd want allies in a crisis." "Assuming they see us as allies," Lee replied, her voice barely a whisper. Her fingers brushed against her data tablet, the screen flickering with the information they'd risked everything to bring. "To them, we're nothing more than a minor inconvenience, and they'll treat us like it until we prove otherwise." Elena's gaze hardened. She hadn't come this far to be dismissed. Every step into the Council's inner sanctum felt like walking deeper into the jaws of a predator, but she squared her shoulders, her resolve unshaken. Finally, they reached the Council chamber, a vast, circular room that seemed to hum with unseen energy. Dozens of councilors occupied tiered seats, each representing a species that had thrived in this galaxy for millennia. At the center sat Councilor Rhett, his piercing gaze fixed on Elena with a mix of disdain and reluctant curiosity. "Captain Mercer," he began, his voice filling the room with an icy resonance. "You stand before the Galactic Council, seeking aid for your world. You will present your evidence, and we will decide if your plight merits our attention." Elena felt a flicker of hope, a chance. "Thank you, Councilor Rhett. We've gathered data on the anomaly, its spread, its projected course, and the impact on gravitational stability in our sector. This threat goes beyond Earth. It could disrupt the balance of entire star systems." Lee stepped forward, projecting a holographic map of their galaxy. The anomaly, depicted as a shifting, dark mass, loomed over Earth's sector, pulsing ominously. "As you can see, its path is erratic but accelerating. We estimate that in less than a month, it could reach your borders." The council members exchanged glances, murmuring in their native tongues. Some regarded the display with mild interest, others seemed almost bored. Rhett raised a skeptical brow. "Your calculations are crude by our standards. How can we trust projections from a species so young, so unfamiliar with the cosmos?" Elena clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay composed. "Councilor Rhett, our technology may be primitive to you, but our findings align with known cosmic phenomena. This is a genuine threat." A councilor from the Kethan species, a tall figure cloaked in glimmering armor, spoke up, his voice like grinding stone. "And what do you expect us to do, human? You wish us to divert resources, manpower, for what? To save a single planet?" "No," Elena replied, her tone steady. "To save the galaxy? We're offering our findings to help all of us prepare. You have the resources, the advanced technology. We have the will to do what it takes to protect every life at risk, not just our own." A tense silence followed her words, broken only by the hum of the hologram and the low murmurs of the councilors. Elena's heart pounded. They were close, yet so far from convincing them. Just then, a faint tremor rippled through the room, followed by a distant, ominous rumbling. The councilors exchanged uneasy glances, and Rhett's composure slipped, if only for a moment. "What was that?" Lee asked under her breath, her eyes wide. Jonas's hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm, though he knew it would do little good here. Feels like something's wrong with the station. Rhett's expression darkened. We are currently experiencing some minor gravitational disruptions. It's likely due to increased energy output from the station. Nothing of consequence. Elena's eyes narrowed. Or maybe it's the anomaly. Isn't that why we're here, to address this very threat? Rhett scoffed, though there was a glimmer of doubt in his eyes. Your theories aren't proven, Captain Mercer. The Council will not make decisions based on human fearmongering. The Council chamber shook again, this time more violently, and the lights flickered. This was no ordinary disturbance. Elena seized the moment, her voice rising with urgency. If you wait, Counselor, it may be too late. Let us work together to contain this, to study it. The alternative is risking everything. Red hesitated, his gaze flickering over the shaking walls and then back to her. The counselors were visibly unsettled, and for the first time, a hint of desperation broke through their stoic facades. Elena took a step forward, her voice calm but resolute. We don't have time for your arrogance. Work with us, or we all may suffer the consequences. The room fell silent, and Rhett's expression twisted, torn between pride and survival instincts. He glanced around at the counselors, their faces mirroring his uncertainty. It was clear that the anomaly was not just humanity's problem anymore. The lights flickered once more, plunging the room into momentary darkness. The darkness in the council chamber lifted, but an uneasy silence remained. Flickering lights illuminated anxious faces as the counselors exchanged nervous glances, murmurs of doubt passing through the assembly. Counselor Rhett shifted uncomfortably, his usual arrogance tempered by the lingering tremor in the walls. Captain Elena Mercer seized the moment, her voice cutting through the apprehensive murmurs. This is no random anomaly, Counselor. It's here, encroaching on your doorstep. Rhett's jaw tightened, but his gaze faltered, and the other counselors looked to him, their once detached expressions showing cracks of genuine fear. Counselor Delos, the youngest among them, stood slowly. His dark eyes held none of the disdain that had been so common in the chamber. Captain Mercer, Delos began, his voice low but carrying a note of sincerity that silenced the rest. If you're willing, I'd like to examine the data your crew has gathered. Perhaps together, we can find a way to contain this before it's beyond any of our control. Elena's eyes met his, and she nodded, a glimmer of hope flickering in her chest. That's what we came here for, Counselor Delos. To work together. A subtle ripple of discontent moved through some of the elder counselors, but no one dared to interrupt. Delos beckoned her and led to a console at the chamber's side, where their data could be projected for everyone to see. Jonas stood close by, his wary gaze scanning the room, but his stance relaxed slightly as he noticed Thalas's genuine interest. As Lee tapped on her data tablet, a detailed hologram bloomed in the air above the console, displaying streams of data, shifting graphs, and an ever-expanding map of the anomaly's spread. Delos studied the projection intently, his brow furrowing. These fluctuations, they suggest a pattern, almost as if the anomaly is reacting to something. Tell me, Captain, has it shown signs of slowing or diverting under any conditions? Elena shook her head. No, it only seems to accelerate. But we believe it's feeding on energy sources, cosmic radiation, perhaps even gravitational fields. If we can isolate its feeding points, we might be able to disrupt it, or at least slow it down. A voice from the back interrupted, sharp and incredulous. And you think this rudimentary human data is enough to stop such a force? Thalas's gaze sharpened as he turned to the dissenting counselor. Enough, Erix. If you have a superior suggestion, by all means, enlighten us. Otherwise, allow those willing to act a chance to do so. Erix glared but said nothing further, retreating into silence. Elena felt a surge of gratitude for Thalas's intervention, but there was little time to waste on gratitude. Lee, Elena said, her voice steady. Show Counselor Delos the anomaly's core readings. If we could target a concentrated burst of energy, we might force it to destabilize itself. Lee nodded, her fingers moving swiftly over her device. The core of the anomaly appeared on the hologram, pulsing ominously. It was a churning mass, dense with energy and spinning like a tempest, surrounded by ripples that distorted the surrounding space. The counselors observed it in uneasy silence, the weight of its destructive potential hanging heavily over them. Delos looked at Elena, his expression resolute. I have access to containment drones, powerful devices capable of generating localized force fields. If we could place them in the anomaly's path, they might act as barriers, limiting its expansion. Elena considered it, her mind racing through possible scenarios. It's risky. But with the right positioning, it could buy us enough time to assess the anomaly's response and adapt if needed. Rhett's skeptical voice sliced through the planning. And who will deploy these drones, Captain? You've made it clear humans are no strangers to sacrifice, but this is a suicide mission. Jonas stepped forward, his gaze fierce. We didn't come here to sit idle while the galaxy crumbles. Tell us where we're needed, and we'll get it done. Elena gave Jonas an approving nod, her respect for her crew's unwavering courage only growing. We'll do it. But we'll need coordination from your end, she said, turning back to Delos. The anomaly moves unpredictably, and if we're going to deploy these drones effectively, we need precise timing. Delos looked at her, an unspoken respect in his gaze. You'll have our support. I'll ensure the Council's resources are at your disposal. A murmur of shock and disapproval rose from the elder counselors, but Delos raised a hand to silence them. This is no longer just humanity's problem. It threatens us all, and we cannot afford to waste time bickering over prejudices. The Council will assist. For the first time since setting foot on the station, Elena felt a surge of genuine optimism. They were no longer standing alone. An alliance, however tenuous, had been forged in the face of shared peril. As they finalized the deployment strategy, a faint tremor shuddered through the station once more, this one stronger than before. A siren blared, echoing through the chamber as lights dimmed and then brightened in rapid succession. Thalas's face paled. It's accelerating again. We need to act now. Elena turned to her crew, her gaze hard with determination. You heard him. Prep the drones. This is our shot. With a final glance at Delos, she added, And Counselor, I hope your people are as ready to fight as we are. He met her gaze, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. Captain, I think you'll find we can rise to the occasion. As they raced from the chamber, the hum of urgency filled the station. They had little time, but together maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The station shuddered beneath their feet as Elena and her crew raced through the narrow corridors, the pulsing lights casting an urgent rhythm on the walls. Behind them, Counselor Delos and a team of alien engineers worked feverishly, preparing the containment drones for deployment. Time was slipping away, and the anomaly loomed closer, an unstoppable wave pressing against their fragile defenses. Jonas, is the power core stable enough to manage the drone deployment? Elena asked, her voice tense but steady. Jonas nodded, though his expression betrayed the pressure weighing on him. As long as we don't hit any more surges, we should be able to get them in place. But the drones, they've got limited range. We'll have to get dangerously close to the anomaly for them to have any real impact. Elena clenched her jaw, nodding in understanding. Then we'll go as close as we have to. There's no room for half measures here. Delos approached, his face set with determination. My engineers have recalibrated the drones to emit a field capable of disrupting the anomaly's energy feed. It's a crude solution, but if we can stabilize its core for even a short time, we might be able to redirect it, send it back into uninhabited space. Elena nodded, her eyes flickering with resolve. That'll buy us the time we need. Lee, make sure our systems are synced with the drones. We can't afford any delays once we're out there. Lee's fingers danced over her console as she set up the link, her concentration unbroken even as the walls quivered under another tremor. We're locked in, Captain. The drones will respond to our commands, but the closer we get, the more interference we'll face. Elena took a deep breath, turning to face her team, her gaze steady and unwavering. This is it. We're venturing out on a mission no one has ever attempted. We know the risks, but we're doing this for more than just ourselves. This is for Earth, And for everyone in this galaxy who thinks humanity doesn't belong here. Her crew nodded, faces hard with determination, fear forgotten in the face of duty. Jonas gripped her shoulder briefly, a gesture of solidarity that needed no words. They were in this together, for better or worse. The docking bay doors opened, and Elena's team, along with the Los and a handful of Council engineers, boarded the Council's transport craft. The hull hummed as it disengaged from the station, floating out into the vast darkness where the anomaly pulsed ominously in the distance. The drones hovered around them, bright orbs of potential energy, their spherical bodies gleaming in the starlight. As they approached the anomaly, an unnatural silence filled the cabin, broken only by the soft hum of the engines. The anomaly writhed, a swirling mass of dark energy that twisted and expanded, as if sensing their approach. Its core was a chaotic dance of lights and shadows, mesmerizing yet terrifying in its intensity. The Los spoke, his voice barely more than a whisper. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. How can something so beautiful hold such destruction? Elena's gaze never left the swirling chaos outside. Beauty and danger often go hand in hand, Counselor. But that's why we're here, to face what others won't. Jonas activated the drones, sending them forward in a precise formation. They fanned out, forming a perimeter around the anomaly's core. Each drone emitted a soft blue light as it engaged, creating a latticework of energy fields. The anomaly reacted, writhing against the constraints, testing the boundaries with relentless force. Hold steady, Elena murmured, her hands gripping the console tightly as the readings on the screen fluctuated wildly. Come on, just a little longer. Lee's voice cut through the tension, strained but clear. The anomaly's energy levels are stabilizing. It's working, Captain. It's actually holding. A collective sigh filled the cabin, relief mingling with the residual tension. But the moment was short-lived. An alert blared across the console, and Lee's face paled as she scanned the data. Captain, the anomaly's adapting. It's shifting its energy output, trying to overwhelm the drones. Elena's heart raced. Can we reinforce the field? The Los shook his head grimly. If we divert more power, we'll burn out the drones. They weren't designed to handle this level of resistance. Jonas's hand hovered over the controls, his voice low. We can amplify the field with our own power core, but it'll drain the ship. We won't make it back. Elena met his gaze, her eyes fierce. If we don't do this, none of us will make it out. Activate the override. With grim determination, Jonas rerouted their power to the drones, and the blue field around the anomaly intensified, pushing back the dark mass. The ship's lights dimmed, and a cold silence filled the cabin, but they held firm, eyes locked on the anomaly. As the field closed in, the anomaly convulsed, its form shrinking, collapsing in on itself. The energy within twisted in a final, desperate surge, then exploded outward in a flash of blinding light. When the light faded, the anomaly was gone, dissipated into the void. A stunned silence filled the cabin as the crew took in what had happened. The readings were clear. The anomaly's threat had been neutralized. Elena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She turned to the Los, a slight, tired smile on her face. Guess that's proof enough that humans don't give up easily. The Los managed a smile in return, a newfound respect in his gaze. Captain Mercer, I think you may have just saved more lives than you'll ever know. Their ship drifted, running on emergency power, but the galaxy was safe, for now. And as they floated in the silence of space, Elena felt the weight of victory, hard-earned and shared with new allies who had once looked down on them. For the first time, humanity had proven their place in the galaxy, and it felt like only the beginning.